Hey everyone, it's Nabin, or Nathan, and welcome to Brooklyn Bangla. I wanted to take a very quick moment to, number one, thank you for listening, and number two, kick off this series. Just for a bit of context, I began recording this series in 2019 as I was traveling the world, and a lot has happened since then. Namely, the protests in Hong Kong, the election cycle in the USA, and also the coronavirus. What I was hoping to do was give you three different types of listening experiences. One being, I'm a music producer, so taking you inside the process of making music. But beyond that, interviewing people that I've encountered in every kind of creative industry. And I've had these fantastic conversations with people around the world. And I've been editing by myself while traveling, trying to bring this to fruition. And then the third thing is there's some more investigative journalism kind of material that is akin to what you would hear on NPR or other networks. Although I've had the opportunity to edit some of those types of shows, I never felt the confidence to go in on a show like that of my own. This right here is my attempt. So I hope during this time that we're all in one place, locked into one location, you find the process of creativity entertaining, you get a little bit of escapism, and a whole lot of information that you otherwise wouldn't have. And it goes without saying, I just hope the best for you, your family, and that this comes to a quick resolution sometime soon. And without further ado, I present to you Brooklyn Bangla. I write about 3 to 6 songs every day, and I call them my daily meditation. So I thought that it would be best, although the subject matter here is heavy, to kick off the entire series with this. My name is Brooklyn Shanti, and this is a daily meditation. I've got a soft spot for physicists. It's probably because my uncle who brought our family to this part of the world was a pretty well-known physicist. His wife a mathematician, my father in turn a scientist, and as I've said in the past, there was some really heavy scientific thought going on in the household. One physicist in particular, though, has always captivated my interest, and that's what I'm thinking about this morning. His name was Robert Oppenheimer. A lot of younger people that love hip-hop probably don't even know who this person is. Some of the people in my generation might, but let's go over the background of this individual. Now, Oppenheimer was a theoretical physicist, and he was at the University of California, Berkeley. But he was also the wartime head of the Los Alamos Laboratory. They call him the father of the atomic bomb. And he played a vital role in the Manhattan Project. During World War II, under his purview was the development of nuclear weapons. On my last album, Missed America, there was an entire passage around nuclear weaponry, armament, and dictatorship, and I'll go into a little bit of it here.
Dictators, murderers, war rhetoric delivered by Twitter character. Questions, never no answer, we do it for the dollar. Welcome to America, it ain't a civil war like a school hand loop. Reality television, pushing buttons, full nukes. White supremacy, propaganda waiting. Syndicated Satan, doing it all for rating. Charlottesville and Vegas.
Are on the streets, and you are creating nuclear weapons, and you are making efforts to reach to the Mars or to the moon. You must have gone nuts.
The only thing nuclear weapons can do is destroy countries, cities, destroy human beings. But since they came into being, there's been an impulse to embrace them and see them as saviors, prevent war, keep the world going, maintain authority on the part of the nuclear weapons possessing nations.
I made that with DJ Chili up in Seattle after a long conversation about Oppenheimer and about what if My father being a scientist, I'm acutely aware of how when you're just doing your job, you can apply single-minded focus to the task at hand. And so, working in missile defense, I don't think that there's ever been a moment of rationalization because of the things that the work has enabled in life. And if you go back to the beginnings of where my father and his family came from, 13 kids in a one-room flat in a tenement in Calcutta on dirt roads in intersections where you may or may not actually get the sweets that day or that week. Maybe not even that month. So I think about Oppenheimer because knowing about the attitude and the aptitude of the people in my family, I think about him, the human, and his family. We have someone who attended Harvard. We have someone that was socialized in America. I mean, he was born in New York City in 1904. He went to school through the Great Depression. He'd seen what America had to offer and what it could potentially become. The reason this morning that I'm focused on Oppenheimer and this moment, it's been a really long 3 years of kind of adjusting to the media pace and the temperament of somebody in the country that I was also born in who's set the temperature to boiling hot. And amidst another type of crisis that the world is going through, I'm reflecting upon the crisis that kind of developed once this person took office. It's more a crisis of the soul, and it's a philosophical construct that I've been debating my entire life, but it started screaming at me only a few years ago. And Oppenheimer obviously had the same type of crisis, but it took seeing the result of his hard work, the first detonation of a nuclear bomb, for him to really understand the type of crisis that would be created in people like myself. And at that point, he referred to a passage from a text called the Bhagavad Gita, and that is an ancient Hindu scripture written in Sanskrit. And long story short, it's a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And Arjuna is a warrior, and he has to carry out his duty, but he feels a conflict in his soul. And Krishna breaks down the concept of dharma, or his holy duty. And there's about 4 key lessons in the Gita. They're around desire or lust, wealth, the desire for righteousness or dharma, and the final state that's called liberation, but it's translated into moksha. Arjuna is a soldier. And just like my father, and just like Oppenheimer, it's his job to fight, not his job to deliberate philosophically around what could or might be. Krishna justifies to him that it's not his job, nor Krishna's own job, to decide who lives or dies, but just to do their job. And you should be unattached to the result of your toilings. Now, I'm not raising this discussion to have a debate around whether that's wrong or right, good or bad. I just want to give some context and background to what is about to come next, which is Oppenheimer was moved to think of the quote, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And this has rung in my ears since childhood, and I thought about it very deeply when writing Dictators. And I thought about the fact that none of this is being discussed in popular media, none of the reflections happening, between North Korea, the US, like all these little back and forths that transpired in the world at that time. I don't know why I'm thinking about this morning, but I do start my day reading the Gita and the Upanishads. I mean, I've got my dad, when we were growing up, had us doing these kinds of things, and now later on in life, I found myself gravitating toward wanting to understand a little bit more. And then in that understanding, I'm like, yeah, nuclear bombs. Let's think about that. That's great. First thing in the morning. Let's go for it. And so that's how I ended up here. It's a result of, waking up and saying, I wonder what that's all about. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. In the metaphysical nature of time and space in Hinduism, there's nothing linear. I've oftentimes explained to myself, this is why we have so many quantum physicists that are Hindu, that come out of India. It's because if you're born into a system wherein it's easy to wrap your head around the fact that time folds up upon itself, and there's a construct by which you can travel through the space-time continuum, which many believe to be meditation. This entire incantation of that passage from Oppenheimer is what got me thinking this morning, because it's got me thinking about what would that sound like? So what I did was I went and I found this clip of Oppenheimer himself talking about it, and I wanted to share that. So here we go.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
And according to the Gita, and according to the principles of Dharma, Oppenheimer was doing his duty, just as I'm doing mine. That is Dharma, but it's different. It's building and constructing in some way, shape, or form. And art is a tool set. But I do often meditate, and I drank for a long while to get away from the practice. I think a solid set of years of drinking equates to my own nuclear bomb going off. That's my reflection. Because if you can cut yourself off from that energetic center point and see it from the baseline, then you'll have the perspective to come back and speak toward. And I always knew that was required, because you can't just talk to somebody and not know, not be able to empathize, not even be able to sympathize. Because if you don't know, you don't know. There is a case of taking that too far, but the smarter of us understand what it is. Oppenheimer never had that ability to divorce himself from that which he did. Whereas a Hindu is able to basically plot their course forward in this methodology of knowingness. It never sat well with Oppenheimer. And he never thought that the world was an illusion. He thought that the destruction was very literal. And so this morning, I'm asking myself, what does that sound like? This is my process, and this is what goes into every single piece that I write. This is how I labor over my craft. And what better way to start this series than to find creation from ultimately humanity's greatest act of destruction. I'm asking myself, what do drums to accompany a bomb detonation sound like? And so in this process, I'm just going through my sound kits and trying to figure out, like, what could this be? Because it's got to be heavy. And I don't think it's not gonna be trap. It's certainly gonna be something a little thicker, a little more solid. Trap depends on the 808 kit, and so it's a lot of 808 bass bounce and then a really light snare, but for me the snare needs to be a thud. Once the drums are set and, I'll figure out a pattern. What we're discussing is pretty ominous, right? It's really, there's got to be something that foreshadows destruction, and it's bereft of optimism. D minor is usually a good place to start, but it's got to seriously be something depressing. And I don't know if I'm going to incorporate Oppenheimer's actual words into this. I might, but let me search real quick, because once I find the melodic progression, then everything else will fall into place.
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
All right, that sounds about good. So I'm going to piece this together bit by bit and then bring the elements in. Then at the end, we'll have the finished piece. To start it all off, I want something organic. And so I picked the piano as the main instrument. That's what I'm going to base the entire composition around. The piano is the human factor here. It's the thing that keeps us connected to the fact that we're all from the earth, and everything down to hearing the characteristics of the wood and having the strings being pulled. It's all a process that can be done without anything. Well, I guess tools were created by science, but this was the tools to kind of put a piano together were created prior to scientific exploration and discovery. I feel good about the piano representing the human factor here. What I'm thinking now is that there should be an element of the calm before the storm and then the silence after the explosion. So I'm looking for, when the inside of your ear rings, it sounds like a bell. So I'm going to find a bell sound, and I'm going to play something really simple, and I want to add a lot of reverb to it. And this represents the silence. The silence that must have been in place before knowing what the result of the detonation would have been. And the silence you hear ringing after the deafening result of success. For the underlying ominous nature of the bomb itself, I want something just subtly present in the texture of the composition that hints toward something in your gut that's kind of being wrenched out. I'm looking for like a synthetic pad sound that's gonna reach into the bottom of your gut and then kind of churn it. It's that nauseating feeling when death and destruction are before you. And I just want that nausea to come through. Yeah, that's it. For a little bit of tension, I love the Juno keyboard. And I always use it. It's like a harsh sound, and it's always good to create lots and lots of tension. Like if you arpeggiate it, it builds a certain kind of drama. And for this, I think I'm going to filter the Juno so it sounds more like an alarm. You know, I think about when a submarine is under fire and you see the red lights flashing. I want to melodically translate that through the Juno into this thing where it's like the bomb has gone off, so in the back of his head, in all the scientists' heads, it's like, what have we done? It's the alarm foreshadowing the death of the future. And nothing dramatic would be complete without an orchestral kind of layer. But again, I don't want to go into something organic and human, because this is the most inhuman and inhumane process that mankind has known. So for that reason, it needs to be a synthesized orchestra. And a synthesized orchestra is never as rich and bright and beautiful as a human orchestra. A synthesized orchestra always sounds like a force. It always sounds like it's a dominant element wanting to take over. It's not as beautiful as a real life orchestra. And in this case, that's exactly what the bomb is. It's bereft of humanity. It's bereft of emotion. It's just the chasm that we're looking into. Now I think I have all the pieces that can put together this composition. So what I'm going to do is arrange it quickly and then and come back and see what we've got. I've only spent the better part of about 10 minutes, but it's not meant to be more than a thought. And this is a process of letting you into how my mind works creatively. So, without further ado, the working title for this is What If We Nuke the World? Oppenheimer's Moksha.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remember trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
And there you have it. It definitely is the daily meditation. So time to move along with the day. And with that, we come to the conclusion of our first episode. Pretty neat, huh? Please consider subscribing to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app or network that you enjoy listening to your podcast through. If you feel motivated to, you can go to patreon.com/Brooklyn Shanti and subscribe to a lot of content being created, but the subscription and the comments would be much appreciated. Outside of that, you can visit me at brooklynshanti.com to keep track of all of the new music that's being released. Brooklyn Bangla, the Brooklyn Shanti Podcast, is produced and brought to you by Someplace Called Brooklyn. That's myself and Carolina Iwanau, Danny Marie, and a bunch of other amazing like-minded individuals in New York City. This is a product of New York City. The resilience of that place lives and shines and speaks through our work, and that's all. I hope you have a wonderful day.